Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Living in Alignment podcast. I'm your host, Amy Starr Allen, and I'm really excited to be here today with Tim Jai Baker. He goes by Jai, and he is the CEO of Luminous Wealth. Tim's pioneering approach to family wealth guides a philosophy that wealth management works best when it's tightly integrated with personal well-being and firmly grounded in lifelong positive relationships. Since 1981, Tim has been helping individuals, families, businesses, and institutions steward their financial hopes and dreams. He brings a wealth of experience from financial disciplines and integrates that with his work in the field of human psychology and design, utilizing tools like human archetype assessments and family genograms, which help reveal an individual's authentic potential and align financial strategies with personal values. Tim's mission is to guide his clients toward their deepest desires and true fulfillment by fostering a healthy, stress-free environment where financial and personal well-being are seamlessly integrated. He believes that wealth management should not occur in isolation, but rather as part of a holistic approach that considers the whole person. To achieve this vision, Tim has assembled a team of multidisciplinary professional advisors working from a centralized location, ensuring that the mission statement of the families his company serves is effectively realized. Now residing in Jupiter, Florida, Tim lives an active and conscious lifestyle with adult children and grandchildren near and afar. He enjoys golf, running, and local beaches, college sports, writing, meditation, well living and nutrition, global travel. He attends retreats on human consciousness and remains in gratitude for each present moment. What an amazing bio. How are you doing today, Jai?
Amy, I am well. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. And I just love what you're about. I mentioned to you briefly before we started the recording that I get a lot of people um asking to be on the podcast, many of whom I turn away. But I just think that I was really intrigued by your background and how you've got this like very spiritual approach to money, which is and finances and spiritual and relationship sounds like approach to it. So I'm really intrigued to talk about that and hear more about that. So I would love to just to start off, just to have you share with us a little bit about yourself, about your backstory and how you ended up here.
Well, it's been quite a journey. Um, I grew up in southeastern Virginia, the Williamsburg area, and years of growth, I was introduced to golf, became a favorite sport of mine, and it allowed me to go to the University of South Carolina on a golf scholarship back in the late 70s. And it was a great sport because it teaches you so much about life because that sport, it's not a team sport and you're on an island. And y- it's not always fair, and life isn't always fair, but it's how you respond to life and how you respond to the sport that you're competing in that makes the difference or the experience that you're looking for. But I got married in college. After graduating, I played a year pro. My wife at the time said, and she was in pharmacy school. Each time I came home from a tournament, she said, get a real job. And after one of those tournaments, about a year later, I got a real job. And 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 I had always actually because not I played golf, but I also worked all throughout my life. I mean, I can even remember as a kid, 6, 7 years old, going to my great grandfather's um, house that was just covered with tall pine trees, and we would rake up pine needles, and he would tell me to make sure to fill up those sacks, and so that he was going to sell those, and he wanted to give everybody their money's worth. And so that was a money script that I grew up with, and then actually have implemented in my life as I've noticed.
Mm,
But And so I had a couple of starter jobs that then led me into my first part of my career, which was with life insurance. Um, I was with Prudential Insurance Company. It started in February of '81, and I was their rookie agent of the year in the state of South Carolina, and I hated my job. Um, but it was really a great time to be in that industry because in February of '81, we had 10% inflation, 10% unemployment, 21% money market yields. We had 30-year mortgage rates that were 19.45%.
Mm.
And so, because of the dynamics of the markets, then insurance companies created new permanent life contracts that would pay their policyholders an interest rate on the cash value of those contracts because the old whole life policies just weren't providing much of a return. So that's when they came up with universal life contracts and indexed annuity contracts. People also wanted to invest in the stock markets. And so they came up with variable life contracts so people could invest in the stock and bond markets with their cash value of their life policies. But I moved on from life insurance and I joined a financial planning firm for 7 years. And this was in the '80s. And it was actually the infancy of the financial planning industry. Um, and after 7 years with them, I moved on to work with a regional Wall Street firm, Legg Mason Wood Walker, which was located out of Baltimore, Maryland. And I was with them for 7 years, and then I spent 16 months with Prudential Securities, also a Wall Street firm, before I just couldn't stand being with that behemoth after a while. I would call into the office and the phone rang 25 times, and I didn't even get an answer through the phone call. And I knew the only way I could control the quality of experience that my clients were having would be to have my own firm. And so I left all of that industry experience and created at the time Baker Capital Advisors, which was a multi-generational financial planning firm. And it was just me and an assistant. And I literally begged, borrowed, and stealed all of the resources that I could to start up my firm. And people at Prudential told my clients that there's no need to go on with Jai because those little guys just don't make it. Everybody came along with me, and a couple years later, Prudential Securities wasn't in business anymore. And so it's been a really interesting path through the years. Um, and through that time, after I formed Baker Capital Advisors, and it was interesting, right when I embarked on this venture was when I started my meditation work and my practice. And so it's interesting that they coincided like that because a couple of years later, I needed to get my ego out of the name of my firm. And I started to bring in other teammates to that company. And I wanted everybody to feel like it was their company and not mine. And so I Wikipedia'd nautical terms one day because there was a nautical theme to a lot of the investment work that we did. And they came up with the name timonier, which is French for the helmsman, one who directs the charted course of a ship to its harbor of destiny. And I felt like that's what we were doing in our work with our families through those decades. Um, but in a sublime way, they kind of laughed at it because when you spell Timonier, it's Timonier. So my name Tim was still involved in the name of the firm, but you just couldn't hear it in the pronunciation of it. And through the years, I used my client meetings as my feedback loop of information that was telling me what else I needed to provide my clients to enhance this human experience that they were having with me. Because I was a wealth manager, financial planner that had the expertise in the areas of insurance and financial planning and investments. But I then knew that I needed to bring in a CPA to complement and support me in that important area of work in the planning process. You can't really do anything um, strategically around tax matters on April 15th, only to a minor degree. That needs to be done in the prior year. And so I needed to have a CPA on my team, and a CPA and a wealth advisor need to be joined at the hip in October, November, and December of the year that you're working with clients in. Well, when you bring in one CPA, you can't have another. You can't have just one. You have to have another. You have to have a backup and somebody who is their teammate as well as their second eye. Then I brought in an attorney for the estate planning work that we were doing. So, and then I brought in another wealth advisor. We had a real estate advisor on the team. And and before I sold my practice, which was a little more than 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago now, I brought in an Ayurvedic practitioner for mind, body, spirit work. We were fee-only advisors. I was working with about 155 families. Um, Most of the people that I was working with were either physicians or executives at hospitals or hospitals themselves. And I was managing about 400 million in assets at that time. Um, but I sold my practice to my colleagues, and I did it in an installment sale and took a 3-year sabbatical. And after a year or so, I was telling people that I was writing a book, but I wasn't writing a book. And the third year, I got that story got old for me, so I finished writing a book, The Awakened Investor, that came out Thanksgiving, 2 Thanksgivings ago. And along the way, I knew I was going to recreate what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And so I recreated the work that I had been in for almost 40 years. Uh, but this time around, where I'm expanding what we're doing, because money can't be managed in a silo. And a part of the aspect that inspired me to do this was looking back at my client base. I thought, and working with a lot of these families for more than 30 years, I was working with them in their prime of their earning years, and then working with them also and guiding them in their retirement years. And I thought, if we met or exceeded their wealth goals, that these people would be happy and contented. And what I found out was they weren't.
Hmm.
My largest client was my most stressed out client. And and so this go round, I wanted to be able to do something about that. And so what I've done is I've taken this almost 4 decades worth of um, evidence-based wealth management team concept, and I'm marrying it with the Blue Zone research, those cultures that have longevity and the highest quality of lives, and marrying that with the financial piece.
Hmm.
Um, and so, because like I said, money can't be managed in a silo. Your health can affect your finances. Your relationships can affect your estate planning choices and the heirs you're going to leave your money to. Your career can affect your mental and physical health. Your emotional intelligence can affect all the discerning choices you need to make about all the other major aspects of your life. And so, back in 1250 AD, the etymology of wealth was weal, Weale, and its meaning was prosperity, health, and well-being. And then somewhere around the 1400s, the Dutch dumbed it down to this thing called money. And so now pervasive through our society, when we ask somebody if, or when we're talking about other people being successful, we're always thinking in terms of money. But you can have $1 billion, but if nobody wants to be around you and you're in super poor health and you can't get around that's not wealthy. And really, all we're doing right now is returning back to the etymology of what wealth really meant, and that's prosperity, health, and well-being. And our goal is to be wealthy in all of the major aspects of our life, and we have 8 aspects that we work with, and that's going to be the gold standard for what successful is, and not just the money piece. So that's what we're doing now.
I love this so much. And it's so needed. And you're so right. Wealth is not just about money. I always think about like my definition of wealth for me personally has to do with freedom. Freedom to move around the planet as I choose, and freedom to work when I want and not work when I don't want, and not to have somebody telling me when I can do things or whatever. So, but for everybody it's different. But that's like wealth to me. Like wealth to me is not Louis Vuitton handbags and fancy cars. Like I don't care about that stuff. I care about my health and my spiritual life and my freedom, So I think it's so important. And I love, by the way, the subtitle of your book, and I'm just going to say it for everybody: The Awakened Investor. Master your financial anxieties while unveiling a conscious pathway to prosperity and true fulfillment. It's so profound because when you think of an investor, like the first thing that comes to mind is just like money, like investing money, right? And then there's the
Right,
subtitle that's like, no,
right.
that's not what an awakened investor is. So I love that. Do you want to tell us anything else about what's in that book?
Sure. And to your point, I mean, through the years, all of my work was through referral only. I never spent any advertising dollars, never marketed. I guess referral only is a marketing channel. But I wasn't good. I didn't like getting on the telephone and calling people up to talk to them about business. And so when people came into my office, they kind of knew a little bit about our approach, but they were still pretty disarmed when they came in and how we began our conversations. Um, because for me, the most important ingredient in being here is to know thyself. To know thyself is to know all of reality. Um, Another aspect of knowing thyself is to know who we were programmed to be. Because whether believe in reincarnation or not, it doesn't matter. We do know that we come from this lineage in our history of people. And then we're in mom's womb for 9 months, taking on her chemistry and her emotions. And then we're in the world, and for the first 7 years that we're in the world, our minds are operating at a theta frequency. At this frequency, we're just a sponge for our environment. We can't say no to anything that's happening around us. We just have to accept it as truth.
Hmm.
And so what happens is in those first 7 years is we've become the garbage bin of everybody else's desires and limitations and the experiences that we have in that environment. And it's not until age 7 that we form this beta frequency of a mind. And that's what we're conversating on with now. I can say something and you can say I disagree with that or I don't understand that. But until then, we're just accepting all of our environment as truth. And then we live the rest of our life that way.
Hmm.
And we do so until perhaps a pain event comes. That gives us a chance to find out what the causal reason was for this effect of this pain event. And it gives us a chance to examine our life, perhaps for the first time. You don't have to go through a pain event to examine your life, but usually that's what it takes.
Hmm.
And because it takes direct experience for most people to want to change something. Um, if we don't examine, if we have an unexamined life, I call that a life that we've been fated, one that was given to us and we just followed along with. We were
Right.
told to be this or to be that, and then we were, and then we conducted our lives the way that everybody else gave us the rule book for. But if we wake up and then we can find that authentic self within us, we find that connection to our higher self that we came here from, and we examine that. And it takes sometimes it takes a lifetime, but it takes a lot of time with introspection. But if you can take the time to examine your life and tap into that consciousness, now you're living a life of destiny, one that you've chosen, one that wasn't fated to you. And so when people came into our office, the first things that we start doing is we develop a human archetype assessment. And this is based on Carl Jung's work of broad personas. We all fall, all 8 billion of us can fall into however many groups we want to slice up. But with this body of work, we're identifying 10 broad personas, and then we drill down into the unique thumbprint of who we are. And among the things and information that we're able to collect in here are our blind spots, our biases. We find out, our strengths. And it's important, though, to find our blind spots because typically these are repeating patterns that are happening in our life, and we're thinking it's the outer world that's causing them, when in fact it's us. And so what makes it a blind spot? It's the fact that we are so much of that pattern, so much of that behavior that we don't even recognize it. I mean, fire doesn't know itself to be hot. Water doesn't know itself to be wet. And so when we have these patterns in us, we don't see ourselves that way. And a lot of times if I'm working with a couple and they're in my conference room and we start discussing the reports that we do with these human archetype assessments, I'll say, what do you think about it? And they'll say, well, 95% of that was me, but this one thing over here, that's not me at all. And usually I'll see the other spouse or partner across the table with a big grin and they're pointing their finger at their partner and they're going, that's exactly who you are. But life is nothing but a fractal. It's infinite repeating patterns of information. You see it in the cosmos, you see it in nature, and in the behavior patterns of the human condition. And so after we develop the human archetype assessment report, we get into a family genogram. And I collect several bits of information on every family member, but we'll go to the parents, and then we may even go up to the grandparents and collecting information on the siblings, your partner if we have one, and then on our children. But once we get the whole family lineage on one piece of paper and we get some common bits of information about them, they can now see why they are who they are because they fit the family pattern of behaviors. Uh, And one of the important pieces of information we get in there is our money scripts, what money scripts we get from our parents, grandparents, friends, other extended family members, because this is what is going to define how we feel about money. And so I also get them to go through an exercise with me, and so we can determine how they feel about money. Um, and so and then finally, after we develop this body of work and information, we get into philosophies of life that may involve finances or not. Um, then we get into goal setting, and then finally we'll eventually get to what the financial facts are, but they're way down the path. It's the least important thing for me. The most important thing is helping people understand who they are, unveil who their authentic self is. Now we can develop goals that are ours and not what our work colleagues want us to be and what our parents wanted us to be, but who we want to be. Not, and sometimes not even what our spouse or partner wants us to be. We can get some real authentic goals in place. Now that's a real anchor. That's a real hot spot and something that can provide some really incredible inspiration in people's lives to want to try to move towards and reach. Now it makes the money aspects meaningful. We have to get the why we're doing this first. And out of all of that information, we develop a financial plan, one that's we can determine what people's lofty goals are. I have them dream big, and I create one scenario of what it's like to have castles and chariots in the sky. And then I ask them to give me another set of goals if we couldn't reach those with our resources and what we're willing to do, and tell me what a comfortable life would look like. What would be very acceptable for them that they would enjoy having also. So that's another set of financial goals. And what I found through the years is that about 95% of people will wind up being able to confidently achieve a path between those big dream goals and their comfortable goals. Um, Probably a half a dozen times I had clients that could accomplish goals that were beyond their big dream goals. And about half a dozen times I had clients who, at the current situation, weren't going to be able to achieve their comfortable world goals. But that gave us a chance to course correct. And with just some minor adjustments in a couple of places and some minor modifications of behavior, we were able to get to our comfort zones. And so that's what the whole planning process looked like, but money was the last thing involved in that process. And so I did it that way because you mentioned something earlier before I got into my background. You mentioned something about money and spirituality. And so for decades, I've gone to a lot of spiritual retreats, anywhere from 3 days long to a week long or 2 weeks long. And usually after about the third day, I never ask anybody about what they do for a living. I want to know more richer aspects of them. But about the third day comes along and people are asking me, well, what do you do? And I go, well, I'm a wealth advisor and I play a role in that. And the first thing that out of everybody's mouth is, how can you be so spiritual and be in the wealth business? And I say, well, that tells me more about you than it does about me. Because money is just a neutral tool. It's
Mm,
not good or bad. It's just like nuclear power. You can light up cities with it or you can blow up people with it. It's the character revealed through the use of the tool that makes it look good or bad. And so money's the same way.
hmm
And so we have to get away from this idea that somehow money is bad. But, we represent 4.2% of the world's population in the United States. And we've created 62% of the world's business valuation. And PBS had this documentary that America has a retirement dilemma. I mean, how can this be when we have so much resources for this percentage of the world population? And one is that we don't have a good relationship with money. I mean, it's just like if you have a partner that you're with or a spouse, and if you're not feeling good about them, you're just an accident looking for a place to happen.
right.
And so that's where we are in America with money. Part of it is this financial system that's in place that the consumer has to gain their advice from, that is fraught with lack of integrity, conflicts of interest, and immorality. I mean, that's one hurdle in this process of why we're not doing better with our money. But the other aspect is we have a poor relationship with it.
hmm
And at the very root cause, because in all of life, whether it's a disease in our body or anything else or something that got broken, there is a root cause to it. And the root cause is that we are separate from our source. We're separate from consciousness. We're separate from God. And we're living in this we're living completely in this outer world environment of ours. It's the TikTok world, I call it. And so because we have become disconnected from God, we're having this issue with money.
Yeah, I love that. I was reading on your website earlier, and this is, this wasn't part of your bio, but it was on your website, and I feel like this kind of sums up what you were just saying as well. It says Tim seeks to guide consumers toward embracing their higher selves through conscious choices, illuminating a path to a radiant life. His vision is to discard obsolete environmental histories, replacing them with conscious software that propels us toward an authentic, inspiring, and boundless destiny. And I love that so much because, again, I feel like when people think about a wealth advisor, financial planning, or whatever, this is not the conversation that they're having. They're not talking about, you know, being authentic and a boundless destiny or whatever. So, you know what I mean? So I just think it's so amazing what you're doing. And it's so, I 100% agree that there's so much more than money when it comes to wealth, and that our connection to consciousness and source is such a big part of everything. I guess one thing I'd love to know, I know you were going to tell me where you got the name Jai, but I'm also curious where like the types of spiritual retreats that you've done, because I've done a lot myself. I'm just curious kind of what your
Mm.
a little bit about your spiritual background or the things that you
Yeah,
love.
yeah, and I'll go 9 months before my spiritual path. So I grew up with my mother was a Methodist Sunday school teacher. She had this pendant that she never missed a Sunday for 21 years in her Sunday school teachings. But for some reason, it just never resonated with me. I got scared to go into church.
Mm.
Um, and so through the years, I was pretty much just void of any kind of spiritual practice, religious practice. Um, I knew there was a higher power. I just didn't know how to define that, or the stories that I was told just didn't seem to resonate with me. Um, and in 1997, I was playing a round of golf in Beaufort, South Carolina, and I was on the 14th hole, and I swung the club, and it felt like a sword went through my left shoulder, and I couldn't finish the round. And I went back home and I went to a physical therapist and they beat on it. Nothing helped. I went to Martina Navratilova, personal trainer, and she did this acupuncture treatment on it for 60 days. It felt good while she was doing it with those electric needles, but it didn't help it. And then I went to an orthopedic surgeon and he puts this, foot-long needle in my shoulder and he said, ice it down for 2 weeks. If it's not better, we'll scrape out the underside of your shoulder and make room for your joint to move around in there. And 2 weeks went by, and I mean, I couldn't put on a suit coat. I couldn't lift weights anymore. Even when I'm driving the car, I felt the dull pain in my left shoulder. But I knew I didn't want to get cut on. And so I just iced it down uh, for the next almost year. But I iced it down every night. And then I was um, reading some Tony Robbins material. That led me to read something about Deepak Chopra. So I read one of his books, and at the very end of the book, he mentioned something in this paragraph about meditation, but he didn't evangelize about it. He just mentioned it. Well, you can't read just one of Deepak's books. You have to read another and then another. But his second book was the same way. And same thing at the end of the book, it was a mention about meditation. And so I started coming home after work, sitting on the hearth of my fireplace and meditating for 20 minutes. I would just simply close my eyes and say to myself silently, "Thy will be done." And after doing that for about 2 or 3 weeks, I got really curious about wanting to know how to do it the right way and what it was all about. So I found Deepak's website, and there was a teacher of his in Bedford, Virginia. And so it was 2 hours away, and I went over there for a 3-day weekend and learned my mantra meditation technique. And I came home and I was meditating in the mornings for an hour at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And on the third day that I was doing this, I'm driving home and I'm holding the steering wheel and I noticed my left shoulder didn't have that pain in it anymore. I
Mm.
said, wow. And I get home and I'm I can do a push-up. I'm putting on my suit coats, and I've never had an issue with this left shoulder again. And this was in
Wow.
1997. So I knew that something powerful was there. And so, the word meditation is to become familiar with light. With what? Familiar with the light that we have been incarnated into this body from. And by just sitting empty with our minds in that light, you're bringing homeostasis into all 60 trillion cells in your body. You're bringing balance into every aspect of who you are just by being empty and becoming familiar with that light in that space and time. And so I won't get into the other benefits of meditation, but it's a very powerful aspect in people's lives. And Dr. Chopra told us, and my first retreat was with him in 1998. 2008 in Wollongong, Australia. We flew into Sydney, and for 8 days we meditated for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, lectures during the day, amazing vegetarian food, entertainment at night, recapitulation before you go to bed. And so you can imagine meditating 4 hours a day for 8 straight days. I mean, I felt like I was on drugs. I was loopy. I mean, I was floaty. You go through, your body has a chemistry of drugs in there, far more drugs than there are on the planet. And you just have to know how to tap into your receptor sites in order to tap into these experiences. And so he told us when we left, he said, now don't go home and evangelize this. You're not going to save anybody from anything by by, not telling them this. And so we didn't. I mean, I didn't. But what happens is people notice a change in someone who is taking that practice and they've embodied that practice.
Yeah.
Um, they'll notice changes of what their habits, what they're doing, even how they look. And so when people would ask me, then I could share my story. But I was never going out evangelizing about meditation. But I can say now, after doing this since 1997, um, I would lean on the side of evangelizing this because it really is an important ingredient into tapping into our true self. Um, Going inside and being able to connect with the universal mind of God and the infinite intelligence that's in space and bringing it into this human experience is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And it changes people's lives. It eliminates disease, along with accelerating people's paths into what they're doing in their everyday lives, from their relationships to their work, their careers, their outcome. The synchronicities that happen to you each day are magical. And and so that was my first experience. I went back for a second retreat of his in San Diego, but we were learning the chakra meditation techniques. There's 4 sutras to each chakra. And then the second one I went to was an advanced retreat for that. I later went to some events at the Omega Institute. Carolyn Mace was up there. Panache Desai, who's an amazing guy, um, was up there. I've had other healing modalities that I've experienced that if somebody told me they had the experience that I had, I would have said, "You're lying to me." But I had those experiences, and I know what the unseen world is like now because I had those experiences. But I was doing some work um, with Lahu Chi healing energy. It was brought back to the planet by Sai Baba in Bangalore, India, and a Dr. Dan Watson brought it to Durham, North Carolina, and he now lives in Nashville, North Carolina. But it's bringing in an ancient Asian healing energy from 3,000 years ago. And through a 75-minute meditation technique, you're bringing in that healing energy. You're acting as a vessel for the body's highest good. And I was personally went through some physical healings. I went through many visions, and other people that I worked with had amazing experiences and healings as well. So, you know, we have this skin encapsulated bag of bones, this body with 5 senses. And we've bought into that so much that we don't pay attention to uh, the spatial area of the world. And
Mhm.
that's really where the infinite intelligence and information is. And if you can just sit still and empty your mind, you can tap into that. You can absorb that into this physical body and into this physical experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love everything that you just shared about your path. And I was thinking, you mentioned meditation earlier in the conversation, and I was thinking at the time that you said it, I think you said something like meditation, when you started doing meditation was when like you had like a big shift, or like it was the beginning of a new way of seeing your path and your work. And I was thinking when you said that, that I hear this all the time. Like meditation, when I started meditating, that's when my life changed in this way, or that's when these symptoms went away. I just saw a Facebook post the other day from somebody who was basically saying that she's had, I forget, physical symptoms similar to like what you were dealing with your shoulder that went away. And she's like, the only thing that I can credit it to is it's when I started meditating. And I think it is something that people, I know it's become more mainstream than it used to be, but people still don't really understand or believe in the power that it
Right.
has. I grew up in a household where my dad, I mean, it was kind of similar to you, in the sense that he had a really bad injury. He was a handball player and he threw his back out. And he went to physical therapy and chiropractors and all kinds of things. Nothing helped. And he was in so much pain. And eventually he went to a Rolfer. I don't know if you're familiar with Rolfing.
Yes, yeah, I am. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So
Lucky
that
guy.
that changed him. And he decided,
Wow.
and he was like a computer systems analyst. Like he was like a nerdy, like engineering mind kind of guy. But after he got Rolfed, he decided he wanted to become a Rolfer because he wanted to provide that type of healing for people. And that sent him, becoming a Rolfer sent him from New Jersey to Boulder, Colorado, and like meeting these people that were very different than what he was used to. He ended up going on this huge spiritual journey, ended up in India, and we ended up, so I was like a young teenager when all this was happening, and we ended up going to this ashram in upstate New York like all the time. Like on the weekends we'd go up and stay there for the whole weekend with, I don't know if you're familiar with Baba Muktananda, but it was his ashram. And my friends wanted to know where I was, and I was like embarrassed to tell them that I was like at an ashram with my parents, and that's what was going on. And anyway, the reason I'm saying all of this is because in the 80s in New Jersey, when this was happening in my life, it was almost like embarrassing. It wasn't like just common that,
No.
my dad was kind of a freak in my mind. Like, he went from like
Right.
a poker playing, beer drinking guy from New Jersey to like hanging out in India and going to ashrams. And it was like I didn't know how to explain that to my friends. And now it's become, and that led to a big part of my spiritual path, just growing up around that. Like now I'm so grateful that I was raised that way. But I know that now in this day and age, this kind of new agey spirituality, meditation, all of that has become more widely accepted, and it's not so as weird as it used to be. Like I've done a lot of ayahuasca and plant medicine that are becoming like kind of like a household name where it used to be like this big taboo, whatever. Um, but I still think that there are a lot of people that just don't give it enough credit. And the meditation, I've done I don't know if you've ever heard of Vipassana, but I've done a few Vipassana
Yep.
retreats where it's like 10 days
10 day,
of
10 days
silence.
of
It's
silence.
11 hours a day of meditation.
Right.
You were talking about the 4 hours and how you just feel like blissed out and like in this other place. Like, yeah, we can get there just by meditating.
Yeah.
I've experienced that myself and it's crazy, right? And it's like we,
Well, another incredible brother here on our planet right now who's making immense progress with reaching out to so many people is Dr. Joe Dispenza.
absolutely.
And I went to his first retreat in 2013 in Norwalk, Connecticut. Back then, it was a 3 day retreat, 200 people. Now he does these 7 day retreats, 3,000 people come into the retreats.
And they sell out in
Uh,
like 1 second every time.
Absolutely. And now what's so impactful is there's an arm of or extension called Inner Science Research, an affiliate. And this is a nonprofit that's doing studies, clinical trials like a, a pharmaceutical company would do a trial for a drug to try to bring it to market to pass the FDA. They're doing this kind of work on the effects of meditation on the human condition and looking at 63 different diseases of the human condition and seeing what the effects of meditation are on each one of those and how that compares to the Western medicine techniques. And they've now come out with their second paper uh, just a week or two ago of what their research is doing. But they're doing such valuable work now.
Mm-hmm.
So you not only have people's experiences, but now they have FDA level trial work showing you exactly what meditation does for people. And it's just mind blowing. And he's doing such great work, and that's such a valuable entity that's supporting him in that work, and which will ultimately supports all of us because some people have to like have some kind of expert peer-reviewed opinion on something before they'll do it. And
Mm-hmm.
this will start to bring in those people as well, and not
Yeah.
just the people who are listening to that whisper in their head that which is their intuition saying we need to move in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say about meditation, and even for the people who've already embarked on that path, what I do find out is a lot of people will begin that work and then they start to find out that it's not performing in some ways that they were hoping it would perform for them. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times what I'll say is, well, how often is your meditation practice? And they'll say, well, I do it every weekend. And I say, if you may not know anything about golf, I said, but if Tiger Woods had only played golf on the weekends, you would never know who Tiger Woods is today.
Right.
So when you begin this practice, you have to embody it. You can't go to like what most people do or that have a religious practice. They may go to church 2 or 3 times a week, but are they embodying that practice when they leave the temple? And what I say is our body is our temple. And so we have to 24/7 embody that practice.
Yes.
That's where, you can't go into church and then leave it, and then you get on the highway and you're saying not so nice things to people who cut you off on the highway. You
Right.
have to maintain this 24/7, and it's a practice and it's a lifelong practice. But you can't do it just every now and then and expect amazing outcomes.
Yep.
You have to be it. You can't just kick the ball, you have to become the ball. And when
Yeah.
you do, you'll not do anything but that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember even like when it comes to like diet, I remember I was recently working with this doctor, this anti-inflammation diet that I've used to help with some stuff that I had going on with my body. And I asked him because I have a friend that turned me on to this diet. And when I do the process, there's no like cheat days. Like you're healing your gut. And in order to heal your gut, there's no exception. Like you don't sometimes do it. You have to stick to it for 30, 60, 90 days or whatever. And my friend was like, "Well, I'm doing it, but I take some days off." And I'm like, "I don't think that's how it works." And so I asked the doctor about it. This is his thing. Like he's really into gut health and he's just so smart. And I said, she's telling me that like you don't have to be consistent. Is that true? Because I have it in my mind like you can't mess up, like you can't even have the wrong oil. Like you can't go out to restaurants because you don't know what kind of oil you're cooking with. And he said, no, you can't.
Right,
He's like, that would be like a football team only practicing once a week, like a
right.
professional football team,
Yeah,
like it doesn't work that way, So I love that you
yeah.
brought it up. It's the
No,
same.
Dr. Alberto Villoldo is a master at gut health. He wrote a book called How to Grow a New Body. And he's an anthropologist by training, Cuban by birth. He's also a shaman, and he's he is a master at his work, and he lives in Chile. And I went down for a 12-day retreat a couple of years ago, and it was around gut health. And he has this formula using S. boulardii that will uproot the candida in your gut. He says these pills that have, I don't know, billions of whatever bacteria that you get in the health stores just won't uproot it because it's come from halfway across the planet and it's in a pill form and it just won't do it. So he makes this formula to be able to do that. And we
Mm,
got our bodies into a state of ketosis in that 12 days. I went down weighing 183 pounds. So that's a pretty good weight for me. Um, and you can't drink for any alcohol the month before you go down there. But in those 12 days, and I wasn't doing any more exercise other than my body weight exercises that I always did. In those 12 days, I got down to 173 pounds. I'd always told people that I had a six pack, but it's covered up by a bag of ice. But in those 12 days, that bag of ice melted. Oh my
mm,
God. And so there really is something extremely valuable about our gut health. Because, if you don't have a good lining, a fresh lining, fertile soil for the food that you're giving it, we can eat good things and it's not going to go to the extremities of our body because it's got a coating on it that's blocking it from entering different aspects of our cells. And so gut health and getting rid of that candida is super, super important.
yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna check that book out for sure. I wrote it
Hmm.
down, How to Grow a New Body, because
Yeah.
I'm very um much you know, into gut health and do everything I can for that. And I love what you said about Dr. Joe Dispenza. I read recently Becoming Supernatural, his book.
Mhm.
And along the lines of what you were saying about showing people like scientific proof of things, like in that book, I don't know if you've read it, but in the middle of the book, there's like the glossy pages that have like graphs on them and stuff, pictures and graphs of like tests that he would do at his events, like of people's
Hmm.
like just different heart rates and, brain waves and things before and after like one of his sessions. And like you can see it on the graphs, like people are physiologically changing from sitting in a room doing whatever he
Yeah,
does in that
it,
room.
it, it it's amazing. And he's touching more than just the people who come to pay to spend 7 days with him. I mean, he reaches out to the prisons and schools and people who can't afford these things. And he's touching so many lives in a valuable way with his work.
Yeah.
Um, the first time I went to see him, I was in a hotel room. I came out of my room at 7 a.m. on a Friday morning, and the guy across the hall from me came out at the same time. And the guy pointed his finger in my face and he says, "I know you." I said, "Joe, how are you this morning?" It was Joe Dispenza that was standing across the hall from me.
Oh, wow.
And about 3 years later, I was having my 20th anniversary. This was in 2017. I was having my 20th anniversary at T. Monnier Family Office. And I'll make this long story really short, but he came for 2 days and lectured with my
Mm.
clients one evening in a 300-seat amphitheater museum and spent a day with my staff. And we did a videotaped interview together. He came back the next day and lectured for 4 more hours with a guided
Wow.
meditation. And just an amazing human being. And he just, boy, talk about being a ball. This guy does it 24/7. I saw
Hmm.
his, daily routines because he was with me for a couple of days. And
Hmm.
and I'm not sure he sleeps more than about 3.5 hours a night. And he doesn't need to sleep more than 3.5 hours a night because of the
Yeah.
way he lives his life.
Hmm. Yeah. It's amazing. And he healed himself, which is why he's
Yeah,
that.
such a powerful story, right?
Hmm.
He's not operating from theory,
No.
from
Yeah.
direct experience.
I have a friend whose son met his wife at a Joe Dispenza event. Like that's how they met. And so he's changing people's lives in that way too, bringing like-minded people together.
Right. Right.
I really would like to get to one of his events. It's definitely a bucket list thing for me. I
Well, he
haven't.
just opened up his event over at Marco Island, which is in third week in August.
Okay. It's probably already sold out.
Um,
They sell
I don't
outside.
know. I'd check it out.
Okay, I'll make a note of
But no,
that.
so you had been into India. That was a trip that was magical for me as well. I went over there in 2006. And that was led by Dr. Deepak Chopra and his partner, Roger Gabriel. There was 20 of us that went over there.
Hmm.
And that's where Jai came from.
Okay, yeah, I want to hear that story. I know we're getting to
Yeah.
the end of our time, but
Yeah.
I still want to circle back to where Jai came from.
Yeah, so we flew into Chennai, which is on the Bay of Bengal, went down to Pondicherry, which was formerly a French rule colony, also in the Bay of Bengal, went to Swami Malai, which is in the interior. This was all in the Tamil Nadu region, which is South India. Then we went down to Swami Malai, went down to Madurai, but we were in a city called Tiruvannamalai. It's the largest temple in South India, and it's at the base of Mount Arunachala. And on the other side of the mountain is a Sri Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi ashram. And so we were there, and I woke up one morning at 4 a.m. and and I did a 2 hour meditation. I walked down this wide, long path to the ashram for my breakfast. And along the way, there were these breakfast vending carts on the one side of the path, like you'd see in New York City. And on the other side were these guys in these orange robes. Well, they're sadhus. They've renounced materialism. It might be a 46-year-old attorney with a wife and 6 kids, and he goes home one night and says, I'm out of here after tomorrow. You'll never see me again. They try to live on the earth. And I don't hold any judgment around all of these things and choices that people are making, but they come there because they need subsistence to survive. And I went over there and I gave them money so they could get breakfast that morning. And then I kept walking down the path for mine. And a minute or two went by, and this little guy comes running up behind me. He came up to about my chin, bald headed, big smile. He put his hands in prayer and he says, Thank you. He says, I name you Jai. I said,
Hmm.
Jai? He said, Yeah, Jai in Hindu means victory. Today was my victory. You gave me food. And then he put this holy ash on my forehead. And then
Hmm.
I got to see him in the ashram for the next day or so. So that's where Jai came from. And it was a very experiential 2 weeks over there and won't be replicated again.
Is that the ashram that like Ram Dass's guru and Krishna Das, like is that the same they call him Maharishi?
I don't think it's that one. I mean, this was named after Ramana Maharshi.
Okay.
He, at age 16, he lived 2 miles from that Mount Arunachala. He thought he was dying. Literally, he was laying in his bed, thought he was dying. His body was going through all kind of convulsions, and actually, he was having his awakening. And he left home, didn't tell anybody. He went to this Mount Arunachala, went up to a cave. He lived there for 13 years. He didn't leave there. He got this devotee following, and then they moved him down to a lower cave where there's all these monkeys and peacocks around it. And he was there for another 18 years. And then they built this ashram for him, which is where he lived the rest of his life. But, having not left Mount Arunachala his whole life, he traveled the universe through his awakening, through his spiritual technique, through his meditation techniques, breathwork techniques.
Mhm.
And, he's one of the most revered gurus of India.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have a spiritual name that was given to me by Baba Muktananda, who also has an ashram in India, which is why my dad ended up going there. Um, but anyway, I've never used it outside of it was my name tag at the ashram, but I never fully adopted it. But I love that you adopted your Jai as your name.
Yes.
It's a good name.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know, it's a word I've heard a lot because it's in a lot of the chants and things that I grew up doing with my parents, like the Sanskrit
Right.
words that they use in these
Oh,
big
the
chants.
chanting is such an amazing technique as well. I did a
Mm.
3-day retreat one Labor Day up at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, and all the world leaders from um, Krishna Das and Deva Premal and these people came up for 3 days, and it cracks your ego open.
Yeah.
and you just melt and you just surrender to
Mm-hmm.
the moment of just before the mind of consciousness right there. It's just everything just kind of breaks away.
Yeah.
And nothing, you did nothing. You didn't really understand all the words. You just kept that constant drumbeat, that mantra, and and God shows up. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking of another story and I had to leave it because I know we're short on time.
Yeah. Well, if you want to share it, you're welcome to. And it's up to you.
Well, it brought to mind, I used to do these freshman send-off parties for kids in North Carolina that were going to the University of South Carolina. And these kids were from Guilford County and Forsyth County. And so I hosted this for about 12 years. And the last year I did this, there were 75 kids that were going from that area to the University of South Carolina, and we handed out a scholarship each year that was an endowed scholarship from my daughter who had passed some years earlier. And so it's a great event. It's at a country club. They have a great dinner there, and the parents are mingling. The parents are so thankful to know other parents so they're because their kid's not the only one going 3 hours away to school, and kids
Right.
are, really benefit from seeing each other because now they've got a community of people that they can connect with is from home.
Right.
But anyway, so then I interview each one of these kids, and I got to the fifth kid, and I said, all right, what's your major, and some of these other questions, and I said, what do you want to do when you get out? And nobody knew what they wanted to do when they got out. So I said, we're going to call a timeout here. I said, when we get on campus, we're all going to get together every morning and we're going to do a little meditation together. And we're going to say three things in our meditation. We're going to say, who am I? What do I want? What is my destiny? And what am I grateful for? And I said, after 4 years of college, God has to answer you. And actually, Dr. Deepak Chopra asks those questions still today at his advanced level of meditating and the age that he is.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much.
Because we're
So,
always evolving. I mean, we, you know, we think we have a destination, but this life is a journey, and each
yep.
new day we're living, hopefully we're living consciously. And when you do, you're living a novel life. You're
Yes.
not just doing repeating things because they're familiar. And when you can live that novel life, that's the beauty of this human experience. So we're always evolving. We're always doing something new, and so that's why those questions are still relevant, whether we're 17 or 27 or 70.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that you exposed, the teenagers to that because I think that's so much more important than so much of the stuff that's the subjects that are taught in high school, they get out of high school not being connected
Hmm.
in that way with that kind of a conversation. And I think it's so important. Like I said, I'm grateful that my parents were kind of out there with the ashrams and stuff. I was turned on to certain types of mindsets that other people that I grew up with were not, and I'm grateful for that. And I think it's so important and will make a big difference for our youth if they are in that conversation sooner rather than later. And I'm not talking about religion like you. I've never been attracted to like organized religion at all. I'm talking about more of a know thyself, like you said, just
Right.
like going deeper within ourselves and not being afraid to do that and not being afraid to trust our intuition and and just to trust that there's more going on here than meets the eye. And so I'm glad that you were able to have that conversation then.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm super impressed with the number of young people that are adopting this and gravitating to it. And now it's even going into school systems. And kids
Mm-hmm.
that used to be problem kids have been doing meditation. Now they're not the problem kid, they're the straight A kid. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's the kid that goes home to the parents. And now they've taught the parents how to meditate.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's really amazing awakening. It's spreading faster than people can imagine. And
Yeah.
this light has a lot of acceleration to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I got trained in transcendental meditation about 5 years
Mm,
ago, and that, is another method that has been taken into not only prisons, but places like inner city schools where there's gangs and things like that, and completely transformed. Like people that were in gangs are not in gangs anymore because of
right,
meditation.
right.
It's crazy.
Hmm.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this has been an amazing conversation. I wanted to briefly mention, well, I want you to let people know how they can work with you further and how they can find you. But before
Sure.
that, I just wanted to briefly mention that I know you had mentioned that human archetype assessment, and I
Yes.
believe you said it's on the homepage of your website if anyone wants to take
Yes.
that assessment. Um,
Yes. So my website is www.luminouswealth.com. And then the banner of the website is Human Archetype. And you can click on that banner and it'll open you to another page, and you'll see DNA behavior there. And you'll be able to log on and take a 46 question quiz, and it'll help you. It'll provide your persona to you, and it'll give you you'll get a report back as soon as you finish the quiz through to your email. And then it even has a couple of videos in there describing parts of your persona as well. And it's a site that will remain, you'll have access to and be able to go back to and revisit and reread and tap into it. But it gives a lot of valuable information in there. And I would encourage anyone to do that. And there's no charge to do that. Um, but otherwise, people can reach me through tim@luminouswealth.com. That's my email. And our phone is 561-919-4808. And my book, The Awakened Investor, is on Amazon.
so
So
what are some of the ways that people, if someone wanted to hire you, like what are some of the ways that you work with people?
Well, fortunately, on that website, not on the homepage, but on one of the pages, I have a 13-minute video that describes this introductory process. But basically, uh, I'll have a introductory call for 30 minutes just to get an understanding if we're even a beginning fit for someone or not, if we can help them or not. But if it looks like based on that conversation, it's something that's worthy to investigate deeper, I wind up taking someone through the human archetype studies, the family genograms. I'll develop a full-blown financial plan for them, describe to them the investment philosophies and tools that are used to implement the financial plans that we work with, and make them a final presentation. And then only then do we decide whether we feel like we're a fit or not. So
Mm.
what I wound up doing is not only telling them, but showing them my story. And if it resonates, great. And if it doesn't resonate, great. No one's going to come chasing after them or emailing or calling them every week because that's not my personality or style, and it has to work. I'm not going to ever try to convince anybody of anything.
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is I'm going to say, here's how things work. And then when there's a bump in the road, then they fall off the rail.
Yeah.
And people have to trust the process. And we have
Hmm.
to have people that resonate with the way that we do things. And if they
Yeah.
don't, I can help them point them to different directions where maybe other people do it differently. But
Mm.
I have a way because I saw what works over 40 years, and that's how we do it.
Yeah. I love it. Well, and it sounds like just a unique way that's deeper and probably more long lasting and broader than a lot of the other wealth advisors do it.
Well, the magic is, so I have my team with a real estate advisor and insurance advisor and a CPA and investment advisor and attorney, planner. So that's my well team. No one person on that team is magical, I'm going to
Right.
say. There's lots of us in the country. What's magical is that we all work together and talk together all throughout the year about the client situation. We're glued together. We're
Yep.
philosophically aligned with the family's mission statement. And that's what most people in America lose. They
Right.
run around collecting all of these services from many people, sometimes even more than one investment and insurance guy, and nobody's talking to each other, and there's no financial plan, and there's no revisiting of the plan. And that disjointedness, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing to have everything in one place like that and have, with a team of people that are
Yeah.
all have the client's best interest at
Yeah.
heart and are communicating about that. That's amazing.
And now we have a consciousness coach, and we have a body nutrition coach, and we have a
Wow.
hypnotherapist, we have a spiritual advisor, a lifestyle coach. And so it's
Wow.
all right there to bring healing to the human condition and to support people and enhance what we're here for. Whatever our destiny is, we're here to support that.
That's amazing. Well, before we close, I just want to ask you if you have any last closing thoughts, anything I didn't ask that you wanted to touch on, or I don't know, got something in my throat, or anything that you just wanted to say. I'm gonna mute.
Well, so the most important ingredient is knowing thyself. So I would super encourage people to take this is human archetype assessment and go through that. The next thing would be to make sure that you're developing a financial plan. There's no way to understand where you are when you don't have a financial plan. And a financial plan will bring clarity to your life. It will bring organization to your life. It will show you the possibilities to you of life when you develop this financial plan. And then the other is to make sure that you have a good relationship with money. Um, I was at a retreat in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and the keynote speaker started his morning with money is the biggest stressor in America. And that was his theme for the day that he was going to talk on. And everybody, all these entrepreneurs in the room were all shaking their head. Yeah. And I raised my hand and I said, no, it's not. He said, do you want to say more? I said, money is not the biggest stressor in America. It's your mind. Master your mind and you master your money, you master your career, you master your relationships, you master your health. And so this body of work really is mastering your mind. And that's what heals everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you spoke up before
Yeah.
he let everyone down. Did you ruin his
It
speech?
it was it was a short conference after
You derailed his complete
that.
speech. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes me crazy when people do that though, when they talk like I'm a guru on a mountaintop and I'm going to tell you this truth that's not actually true or, isn't true for everybody. And
Right.
I don't know, because I think especially like at a conference, like people think if they're on stage, then they know what's real, what's
Right.
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 So I'm glad you spoke up.
Well, thanks again for having me on your show. I really enjoyed our enlightening conversation today,
Yeah, it was
and
great.
look forward to knowing you.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna definitely take the human archetype assessment and I want to read your book.
Awesome.
Um,
Thank you.
and I hope everybody else will go check out Jai's website and take the assessment and grab his book and hire him to work for you or whatever speaks to you. So, thanks again for being here with me today, Jai, and we will see all of you in the next episode.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye for now.